Hey, Stink. Uh, Who did I get that from? There's a fitness influencer. Can't remember her name right now. But Talia? Talia. I think it's Talia. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. But hi. And welcome back to This Is Why I Journal. The podcast where crying is cool, silence is overrated, and every emotional breakdown comes with a journaling prompt. And I'm your host, Dana. And today we're going to be gently, not even gently, we're just dragging the myth that strong girls don't cry. Because they still do. They do. Eventually. Publicly at some point. And sometimes it can actually be in the Woolies parking lot. Let's not even cap to each other. So yeah. Strong girls are hot girls, and hot girls cry. We're strong until we're not. For those of you who are joining us from the previous episode, you can take a note of the disclaimers I mentioned. And if you skipped episode 1, side eye, you'll hear the disclaimers there. Let's get into it, starting with my little story. Once upon a time, long back ago, right, I was in full glam. Let's actually clock that. Full glam, yeah. I think I even had like a red lip that day. Like I was in like my full glam era. Lashes, lippy, the whole 9 yards. But in that glam, I was emotionally repressed, yeah. And I was doing so good at pretending that I didn't care. I'd started like getting close to a particular person, and they just decided to just ghost, yeah. It was a meetup, and it was a ghost, like no explanation, no sorry, no nothing, no can we reschedule, just like ghost. And I left, yeah, tail between my legs. And on my way home, I was in Joburg at the time. On my way home, I stopped by Engine, the one in Morningside, across what's now BMW. There. I'm there because they have a Woolies food stop there, yeah, so I'm just trying to get a snack. I'm a Woolies babe through and through, so I'm trying to get some comfort food. And on that day, I think the card machine, not my card. She said there was an issue with network, right? So I had to use cash. Old girl didn't have like enough cash because I had a card. I started jamesing, like I right door, tears, and this lady's looking at me like, because there was full glam, full what, crying in public over what I thought was like a badly connected, in terms of network, card reader. Let's actually be honest, it wasn't about that card machine at all. It was about the silence that I was sitting with. That whole, pretending to let it roll off my back and bottling the emotions so I can come off as chill, so that I can pull off my I'm fine, I swear mentality, so that I can just be like, appear unfazed, unaffected, strong. That breakdown wasn't a random breakdown over a card machine. It was a breaking point, and it was the unraveling of a lot of moments I'd swallowed instead of allowed myself to feel. Oh, excuse me. As they came and went. It was the beginning of, in that moment, the end of my emotional suppression era. And the theme for today will be unraveling that whole silence equals strength and power, unlearning, unraveling that, and reclaiming softness as true power. And like, before we can even like get into that, we need to look into like why we equate strength with silence. It, for me, stems from strong people don't cry, because in a lot of situations, referred to our inner child episode that we're coming from, some in childhood, some of these situations in childhood, that idea was brought forward. Like, if you cry, you're weak. Especially for boy children, you know? Like, Sacheme, which means like don't cry in Shona. And in essence, it then also stretched to girls as well. You know, like don't cry, or like don't cry in public. Don't let them see that you're weak. You know? We've been spoon-fed this message since we were kids, you know? Especially because now if you want to cry, you need a very, 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 very valid reason to cry. Like, you don't just cry. And again, well, back to that point I just started about spoon feeding or being spoon fed this message since childhood. Do you all remember the phrase ethnic children stand up? Or like children who grew up with like gangster parents? Stop crying before I give you something to cry about. That was the harsh version. And you like, your parent like looks you right in the eye and you're like type stuff. Sorry for those who are just listening on audio. You can't see my facial. Or like in a softer version, don't let them see you cry. For older siblings, it was, you need to be strong for your siblings. Like, your siblings look up to you. And we would internalize that deeply without even clocking it. We started to equate silence with strength and with maturity, control with power, and numbness with composure. Silence with strength and maturity, control with power, numbness with composure. Here's what that little kind of belief system did to me, TBH. It taught me to pause my pain or shove it in a box, deal with it later, especially for other people's comfort. It taught me to bite my tongue when I was hurting, smile when I wanted to like scream, or shrink even when all I wanted was to be held. And the wild part is like the praise I got for it. You'd hear things like, you're so resilient, and she tends to be so calm under pressure. But in reality, I was actually dissociating. Clock. I was with performative strength. And a lot of people at the time, especially then, there was an era where people were like, she's so strong because of a situation. And no one actually knew that, guys, I would actually cry into my pillow. Then I'd actually apologize to my pillow for crying into my pillow. Yeah. Or like in the car after seeing friends or family, I just cry. I'd cry on my drive home. And by the time I get home, my eyes must be dry and not even red. You know. Oh, that's actually... I'm a little bit triggered. I'm actually a little bit triggered thinking about that era. But anyway. Let's look at it in terms of like the big dogs. And pivot to some of our soft girl icons. Arguably, don't fight me. SZA. I love her. I know we have our mixed feelings about SZA, but let's clock it. She is the queen of contradiction. Some of you will take it extreme left, others will take it extreme right. Please don't put me in the middle of your tug of war. I said what I said. And for me, it's because she can go from, I'm still that bitch. I jumped. Because, like, to take it back, she'll go from, you make me hate myself, or like, you make me feel this way, to I'm still that bitch in the same verse. And it's what being a multi-dimensional woman actually feels like. It's what being a woman in this era of life feels like, because people will make you feel. Whether it's feel ugly, feel stupid, feel whatever. And then if you then choose to be strong and take it on the chin and make changes, they still won't be happy. Do you get what I'm saying? So like, Yeah. Um, being a grown up, I think I was talking about Lizzo and like how she navigated the weight loss. I mean, when she was what everybody deemed to be overly plus size, people were telling her to go on Ozempic. She loses weight, and people are still critiquing. That'll become its own episode, the contradictions of like social media. But let's move on to like Olivia Rodrigo. TBH, yeah. Her career fascinates me because it's low-key built on like teen girl sadness, and that fascinates me because growing up we low-key didn't have that. We grew up with the whole like cool girl, it girl type stuff. Like that was the culture. You wanted to be the Janae Aiko in Post to Be. You wanted to be that like cool whatever, even though there was the whole sad girl phase, like the Tumblr girl phase. But even that wasn't like genuine sadness. That was just like, that was performative sadness to mask everything else. If you want the deep dive for that, episode 1 has it. But Olivia, she gave us crying crash out girl like in cinema in 4K. And because she did that, it made being sad popular. Weirdly, therefore now being sad wasn't being weak. It made space for being sad to be considered, safe. Another example is Adele. When, when someone like you came out, there were two types of people: the people that were belting it in the mirror, and the people who were on the floor crying. Like you were either one or the other, because she actually made heartbreak. I don't use the word sacred, but like she normalized it to a certain extent, or she encouraged it to be normalized, because now when people are saying that, they're acknowledging their feelings, right? So it's okay to cry, be sad. It's okay to sing to yourself in the mirror, because never mind, you'll find someone like them, and you wish them nothing but the best. Although some of you don't be wishing anyone the best. Beyonce. I'm gonna bring her up because of how big she is, and I mean, and her bigness is valid, TBH. Because okay, I'm not gonna get into the debate about Beyonce being the greatest of all time, because I don't have the energy to be fighting. But in Homecoming, she casually drops the "I cried in the limo after the performance." That line clocked it, because remember, again, being told crying is for the weak, crying is for this. You then realize that even the people that a lot of us idolize, they be crying. So like, why are you suddenly believing that suppressing is what's cool? Beyonce is crying. Adele made a career off of crying, or like crying in cursive, and like such a smooth anyway. Olivia Rodrigo made a career out of crying. SZA made a career out of, okay, I won't say out of crying, more contradiction, but that actually just reflects the current state of life, but again, they were able to make careers out of crying. Therefore, are you actually being strong when you're silent, or are you just trying to be a tough guy? Furthermore, like, we don't love these women also because they hide their emotions. Now that I think about it, yeah, as I said, like, they built their careers off of a lot of emotions. Even in their superstardom, when they're icons and we deem them untouchable, we tend to connect with them, or like feel, because they feel out loud, because they own the softness. I'm not encouraging parasocial relationships, by the way. Clock that very fast, please. But that's the kind of strong you arguably like strive for. Be authentically strong, because even strong people don't have the best days sometimes. The Beyoncés, the Adeles, people who some people deem as like god tier. I don't agree with that term, but let's go with it. people who you'd believe like they're perfect and they have everything, they're so good, they still cry. And that strength for them isn't the robotic kind. In their case, it's the poetic kind, but still, they're crying. You know, we are in a society where women who control emotions are the ones who are praised, not women who express them. Think about those three. Think about times when, okay, maybe let's use a different example than those three for this one. One I can think about is, I don't want to start a fight, but like Megan Thee Stallion, when she did, I think it was an interview with Gayle King about her being pew-pewed, and she was crying. And it came off as performative, not realizing that, guys, it's her own experience and she's feeling what she's feeling as she's feeling it, Women who cry are treated so differently from men who cry depending on the cry. Because Tyrese cry, my Shayla. We're not going to include that cry. However, like a man who cries, even within that Tyrese, even though people made a meme out of him, there were people who were still going toe to toe, because men who cry, they're brave, they're vulnerable, they're the emotional intelligence kings. And men who cry, hey, I actually appreciate that, because men do be suppressing emotions so much, again, because of how life was set up for them from being boys. However, women, we don't get that same grace, because if a woman cries, she's unstable, she's being dramatic, she's being difficult. We're told we have to hold it together, and when we do hold it together, or like look like holding it together, we get praise. We become resilient queens, we become composed, level-headed, and that's where, like, here's the double standard. People want you to be soft, but not too soft, emotional, but in a way that's still digestible, relatable, but not like inconvenient though. Like, you want to be relatable in a way that's convenient. And so we learned to weaponize silence, to curate our breakdowns. We cry under the covers, but not in front of them. We journal in the pain, but we never voice it. We learn to cry like it's a secret. I'm at the point where, the secrecy and sadness, I'm done with it. I'm sorry. Let me ugly cry, child. Let me loud cry, that mascara stained level, like, of crying, the ceremonial crying. Because every time we cry quietly, or we try to cry secretly just to remain likable, we abandon the most human part of ourselves. Crying it's somatic regulation. Let me put on my nerdy pants for y'all real quick, because crying is not just like dramatic, it's biological. Nerd rant incoming. For everyone who identifies as a nerd, I'm not being offensive, please breathe. So crying isn't weak. It's, as mentioned earlier, big word, somatic regulation. It's your body's way of saying, let me help you through this. Let's break it down with the nerdy pants. Crying lowers cortisol levels, aka your stress hormone. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, aka your rest and digest mode, and it reduces emotional overload and restores homeostasis, aka your internal balance. So when you cry, you're not falling apart, you're processing, you're regulating, you're literally coming back to yourself. And if you've ever cried and felt better after, that's not weakness, that's actually just neurobiology, babes. Because to call a spade and a cat a cat, there are things that make us fear crying. We're not scared of the tears. We're scared of what our tears expose. Stay with me. We're scared of being seen in our most raw state. Mascara running, voice cracking, sniffling, snot running, turning into full on like body sobs. deeper than that, though, we're scared that, for a lot of us, we're scared people will leave. That when they see how tender we can be or how we really are, they'll flinch. They'll decide, this is a bit too much for me, and just like walk off and then come back when you're G, or just not come back at all. We're taught to perform. Okay. Yeah? We're taught to perform. Okay. To smile and say, I'm fine, while we're literally bleeding internally. Because somewhere along the way, someone told us sadness is weakness, sadness is ugly. That transparency was embarrassing. You're like, it's so embarrassing. Why are you doing that? That being soft in this world is dangerous. I want you to hear me now. Your tears are not too much. They're literally data. The data warriors, don't come at me. I said data. I said what I said. They're sacred. They are your body's language for truth. And having mentioned, being told by someone along the way, what I mentioned earlier, it brings me on the tangent of crying alone versus crying with witnesses. Crying with other people present, that's a whole nother level of brave, to be so honest. I got used to crying by myself. I put my phone on D&D. I go into ostrich mode, where I just put my head in the sand and wait for everything to blow over, which means I'm not responding to anybody. I'm not you will not catch me. People think, yeah, she ghosted me. I'm not. I'm crying. Lights off. My face would be in my pillow, silent sobbing. Olympics. Us. How the gold medalist at that. Platinum medalist even. They should make that a tier. Anyway, because crying in front of people felt like standing naked in a brightly lit room. It made me feel kind of exposed and weak, although I was someone who, you would catch me crying in public sometimes. However, if you saw me crying in public, especially before, that's actually when I'd be at my peak, where I just can't contain my tears. My pillow is drenched. It didn't even dry from last night. You know what I'm saying? And the first time I cried in front of someone who didn't flinch, who didn't try to fix me. That's another. They know how to fix people when they're crying. I'll fix you one day. You lot try to fix people, or didn't try to get me shrink away. Something low-key rewired in me. It's like my nervous system whispered you're safe now, which ties into that whole inner child chat. And an affirmation moment was you deserve to be held while you're crying. You deserve softness that doesn't make you shrink. And being held doesn't always mean by another person, because then that means sometimes we'll get accustomed, or we'll need another person there for us to process our feelings. Take that with a pinch. My journaling prompt for this bit is when was the last time I didn't let myself feel something I needed to? Yeah? Okay. You, me, and every version of us that's ever swallowed sadness like it was a sin. The you who held it together when you nearly fell apart, or when you actually really needed to just fall apart. The you who smiled too soon, laughed too quickly, said I'm fine on autopilot. That was an automated response. Pause with that you. Pause with her for a second. When was the last time you didn't let yourself feel something you needed to? Don't rush the answer. Actually think about it and just let the question float for a bit and let it knock gently. Let it land. I've had arguments I've downplayed, and this is my personal reflection. I had a tense conversation with someone I really cared about, and it wasn't a screaming match, nothing dramatic, just it was a very cold and distant change in tone that made the air feel heavy. Afterward though, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even really feel. I just got eerily calm, like almost robotic levels of calm. And I convinced myself like it wasn't a big deal. Like, it's fine. They didn't mean it that way because a lot was said. And I congratulated myself for not like breaking down in that conversation, having been triggered by what was being said. Because some people tend to, myself included, I fight with words, not fists. I've learned how to speak in a way that cuts because words, bruises heal, words stick. It's a toxic thing though. Don't think I'm saying this with pride, but it just, again, shows that sometimes just because someone doesn't hit you doesn't mean what they are about to say is not gonna slice you. And back to it, because of that whole cutting cold conversation, I even afterwards, after saying it's fine, like they didn't mean it that way, I congratulated myself and I was like, wow, that was actually like so mature of you, D. Like, you didn't react. Look at your emotional control simply because I was stoic in that conversation. However, later that night, I remember I was in my room with my little pink fairy lights on when I still had them. I was in Joburg at the time. The pink fairy light meltdown was another day. I was in Joburg. I'm in my room and I was journaling. Opened my journal and I opened the page. As I'm grabbing the pen, I put my hand into writing position, blank. As that blankness hit me, my chest tightened. My face just went like, doof, lights off. And even though it was quiet, my mind started looping. I didn't write anything for a bit. Like, I just sat there with like a dull ache in my chest. The one you feel when your body knows something before your brain does. And when I actually finally wrote something down, all I said, was, and this is an excerpt, why do I keep pretending I'm okay just to protect other people's comfort? That is something I do. Again, tying back to the fact that I fight with words, and not even like aggressive words. Like, I will articulate myself so well that it will slice you so hard. Hence, you find if there's a back and forth verbally, I tend to hold myself back because I know how I can get. I know that I will say words that will slice you because when I get into that mode, my intention is to put you back in your place. Hence, I will bite it back. I will now take the blow. All right. And as I've gotten older, I've learned how to not reach, the slice warrior phase really quickly. However, I'm still left with the fact that I will pretend I don't have anything to say. Or I will pretend like I don't have words to express to you because I don't want to hurt you. Because I know I'm going to hurt you, so I don't want to do it because I know I'm going to hurt you. And so I said to myself, why do I keep pretending I'm okay? Let's protect other people's comfort. They're fine with hurting me. And like, that sentence, once I wrote it down, it hit me like a freight train. I remember it hit me like a freight train. I read it back and I started crying because I actually knew the answer. It's the fact that I've been trained to regulate everyone else's emotions before my own, in my case. To, be strong, downplay my pain if it might make someone uncomfortable, which in this case is now taking everybody else's nonsense because they are not equipped for mine. And another thing that was a condition to me from being a kid is to keep the peace, even if it costs me mine. And my story for this is actually something pivotal in my life. I went through clinical depression from the ages of 17 to 19. Whenever people speak about depression, I mean, the word depressed and, this state of depression, it's chucked around so lightly and loosely that those who actually are depressed don't get for lack of a better word, let's use attention required, because everyone's depressed. So if someone says, I'm actually depressed, instead of saying, damn, someone goes, we're all depressed, and I'm like, babes, as in I'm on antidepressants, and in that time I was clinically depressed for 2 years, 17 to 19. What brought that about was the fact that I was keeping the peace for everyone else, and it cost me mine for 2 years of my life. 2. Yeah? There are patterns we don't realize are actually avoidance. And avoidance doesn't always look like silence. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining, laughing off things that actually hurt, changing the subject mid-feeling, crying later, alone, in secret, journaling around the pain instead of inside it, which I call emotional tiptoeing, because you're afraid to step too hard on the truth, because what if it cracks me again and I can't put myself back together? I think that's another layer of this whole silence equals strength thing. Is like when you do break your silence and break down, you then don't want to go back to being loud or like the breakdowns. You just want to stay in silence. The truth in that though is that as humans we are already cracked open. We just haven't let the light in, and we can reflect on this. I want you to ask yourself softly, no judgment, no pressure, just honesty. When was the last time you didn't let yourself feel something? Was it yesterday, a month ago, 10 minutes ago? What emotion was knocking that you locked the door on? Was it grief, anger, disappointment, loneliness? What were you scared would happen? What were you scared would happen if you let it in? Sorry for the misspeak there. And who taught you that feelings were dangerous? That crying made you unlovable, that vulnerability was a flaw? Who made you believe you had to be okay to be worthy of things? On surface, it might seem like there's no one, like there's no answers really to those questions, but when you dig deep, you'll find them. And, you can do like a quick, soft reframe. If you can, close your eyes. If you're driving, don't you damn dare. If you're in a place where you can close your eyes, then you can. And picture yourself in that exact moment where you shoved the feeling down. Maybe you smiled too fast after feeling that strike in your chest. Maybe you laughed it off. Maybe you clammed up and changed the topic. Right? Now picture the version of yourself who didn't do that. The one who actually cried. The one who said, hey, that hurt. The one who let the tears fall without shame, without apology. Can you feel her? Because that version of you is not weak. She's real. She's honest. She's the softest and actually bravest part of you. The one who wants, I guess, truth more than performance when it comes to emotions. And that version, regardless of how we've been conditioned to believe that strength is suppressing your emotions, strength and resilience is not crying, and that big girls don't cry, or hot girls don't cry, or strong girls don't cry, that version is still in you, and she's waiting for you to acknowledge her and choose her again and again. I did a bit of scrolling in comment sections and Reddit and found a few people's answers to similar journal prompts that were shared. Someone said, I realized I've been numbing out with TikTok instead of grieving my breakup and thinking, girl, so now having done that, we can think about it. Feeling doesn't make you fragile, it actually sets you free. When you finally let yourself feel what you've been holding in, it doesn't destroy you, it releases you, it frees you from the prison of your own mind. If you journal this prompt and cry halfway through in the event that happens, you're not broken, you're breaking open. And saying that, sweetie, is how you begin again, you know. And an affirmation you can check when you're journaling is like, you're still hot when you're healing. I don't care who says what, you're still a hot girl when you're healing, you know. And that affirmation of mine, let's actually slow down and like let the dust settle, let any feelings that might have come up breathe, and let's center in the truth that brought us here, the one that still feels a little rebellious, a little tender, a little scary to believe. You know, you're still hot when you're healing. And before you roll your eyes at me, you, even like if you're currently crying already, or your lashes are stuck together, or you're wearing mismatched socks and living off emotional support chai lattes, that's a personal dig at myself. Especially then. Yeah, here's the thing. We've been conditioned to believe we're only hot or worthy when we're polished. Not when we're crying or when we're healing, when we're polished. You know, when we're calm, when we are emotionally unshaken, when we're cute and composed. But hotness, true hotness, is not about perfection. It's about your energy. It's about how you show up and showing up in like a raw, real, and in a way that is still loving of yourself. You know, it's about owning every version of you, the glossy version, the glowing version, the selfie ready one, and the one crying at 2 a.m. with mascara on your chin and a half-eaten donut in hand. So say it with me. I am still hot when I'm healing. Healing is beautiful. That's the truth of it. Healing is beautiful. Healing is brave. Healing is hot, if I do so myself. Because it's you choosing yourself over self-abandonment. It's you showing up for the girl who thought she had to smile to survive. It's that quiet bravery of sitting with your sadness. And that's a very scary thing, to sit right next to your sadness, sitting with your sadness. Yeah? It's that bravery of sitting with sadness instead of just numbing it. And healing is the moment you stop running and let the waves just wash over you. And instead of drowning, you learn to float. We can break it down even more. Because something that I just clocked. Crying doesn't cancel your hot girl status. And the reason why I keep mentioning hot girls, because that's a very key term in modern Gen Z terminology, right? And crying doesn't cancel that status for you. It, in my eyes, upgrades it. Healing doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong enough to feel everything and still stay soft. You know, you're still hot, a real hot girl when you're healing. Because healing is not, it's not about fixing yourself to be lovable. It's not about fixing yourself to be the it girl by public standard. It's about realizing you've always been lovable, even in your mess. Even when you're brokenhearted, even when you're regressing, even when you're grieving something you can't even name yet. You're still glowing, even through that fog. Real hot girls are honest with their emotions. They don't put up facades. So, like, repeat after me right now. Whether it's out loud in your notes app, in your head, whispering under your pillow because you screamed into it 2 seconds ago, that I am allowed to heal at my own pace. I am allowed to feel. I am still worthy of love, joy, softness, beauty, even in the middle of healing. Because the truth is, you know, to myself and everyone listening, you're not just healing. You know, you're not ugly when you're healing. Healing is not ugly. I mean, it can have ugly moments, but it's not ugly as a whole. You're still hot. You still got it like that. You know, you still good. And with that whole healing at your own pace thing, understand healing is an individual journey. What can take someone 2 years to heal from can take another person 2 days. Don't ever judge your journey of healing from something on another person's journey of healing, even if it's from the same or similar. You know, don't let anyone, or even your inner critic, tell you otherwise, especially when it comes to the whole, like, you're hot while you're healing, because you are. You know, Right. I want to go on a couple of tangents. The tangent topics for today are I can fix him and a red flag, or is it spiritual delusion? Shall we start? Okay, let's get a little bit messy. You know, we've done our journaling and like our crying, and we've sat with our inner child. Now let's pivot into some, like, you know, lighthearted delulu chaos, a little spice for the soul, because we have to talk about this. You know, the whole like I can fix him energy. This might seem left field, but sweetie, there's a connect. The reason why I chose these tangents for this episode, you know the trope. You know, he is emotionally unavailable, chronically avoidant, possibly a Scorpio. I don't know how it's called this, but I've heard the girlies crying about the guys with Scorpio moon, something like that. Definitely in need of therapy, and a lot of us, the soft girls who are in our healing era, believe we can heal people, see him as a project. Stand up. The fixer complex, and like why we attach to allow me to say the broken, because we use the word fixer. The truth is that we also romanticize brokenness. Yeah. The chaos, the potential. We romanticize it in other people, but not in ourselves, right? Clock that. We see the mess, the potential that's muddled somewhere in that mess, and we think, you know, I can love this person into wholeness. You know, I'll be the one he changes for. I ain't gonna cap up in there. I won't even hold you, sweetie. Hence you find I'm not being hypocritical, I'm speaking from experience, because I've been there. Quite a few of us have been there. Some of us are still there, falling in love with someone else's pain and mistaking it for depth. And most of the time it's actually not about him, it's about ourselves and the story we're trying to tell ourselves about worth. Yeah, if I can fix him, then maybe I'm like worthy of love. If I'm the one who heals him, then maybe he'll stay. If I can save him, maybe I won't have to save myself. I think that's the one I wanted to really like hit with this. Because again, we romanticize pain for others, but we don't do the same for ourselves. Imagine if we viewed ourselves through these tropes we're viewing the avoidant partners with. We'd have gone very far in life. You'd be very developed. Because the truth is, you actually can't fix someone. You can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Especially because you can't fix someone who doesn't want to heal. You cannot pour into someone who refuses to pour themselves. And loving someone through chaos doesn't mean they'll love you back in peace. Please take note of that. Right. I have an addiction to potential. I think because I myself, whether it's, you know, this whole inner child or being a strong by like internet standards person, I developed a bit of a thing for people who I thought, you know, needed to be taken under a wing, or needed a hand in life, mostly emotionally. You know, the ones whose eyes were heavy, you know, whose affection was inconsistent, and a tragic playlist was on rotation when you thought of them. I think because in my trying to heal myself and acknowledge myself, I was trying to, you know, now do for others what wasn't done for me. And that can tie into my inner child. because a lot of the people who are in this phase, it's inner child guans, episode 1. Quick. And a lot of these people, they then breadcrumb me through emotional highs and lows. And not gonna lie, I ate it up, because in my head, their emotional chaos kind of made me feel needed. Even kind of, it actually did. Chosen, important. Ding, 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 inner child's chat. I think also because it and the way it ties to the topic today, hot girls don't cry until they do, is you don't want someone. You're fine with crying into the pillow. You're fine with bottling things up, but the next person must never do that. You're a hypocrite to yourself. And we think to ourselves, if I love this person hard enough, they'll love themselves. Let me be your emotional rehab center. Let me be the one who finally makes you better. We're there for other people more than we're there for ourselves. Yeah? Because we're strong, we're resilient in our own pain. But we are weak to everybody else's pain. I would say you must be a dick to everybody. But there's a difference between being empathetic and sympathetic. And the people, we need to realize that. Right? And much as sometimes making another person feel better feels powerful, It's, for a lot of people, it actually feeds their ego. It feeds their inner fixer, their savior complex. So many people have savior complexes and don't clock it. In the end, though, you just get there feeling empty. You're drained. You're questioning why I was the one bleeding when they were the ones struggling. That makes sense. And as girls who have, for the girls who have I can fix him energy, it is a red flag, and I'm going to tell you why. Don't plow the guillotine yet. Let's be honest, if someone constantly needs saving, if they only show up when it's convenient, if they confuse inconsistency with mystery in terms of the hands and how they view things, it's actually not a challenge. It's a red flag waving in your face, possibly on fire. We confuse emotional labor with love. We think staying through dysfunction makes us loyal, when really it just exhausts us. So we need to be clear. You are not someone's emotional first aid kit. You are not a therapist with a crush. You are not a rehab center for emotionally unavailable people with nice playlists and unresolved trauma. You deserve reciprocation, support, safety, and softness. That same energy that you're about to apply to fix the next person, fix yourself. I can fix them. Have you fixed yourself? You're going around fixing everybody else's roof when yours caved in. And it's not to be mean, but sometimes we actually need to be honest with each other, regardless of how brutal it is. Girls who have I can fix him energy, let's not be those girls, right? It's okay to help other people, be there for other people, but understand how it relates to you. How are you involved in the chat? You can fix them. Have you fixed yourself, darling? And there are ways to break the cycle. How do we stop falling for this? The cycle, that is the checklist. I call this the soft girl sanity list. Number 1, recognize red flags. I can fix him energy. The minute you feel that energy hit you, it's not a challenge, babes. It's an emotional debt you're never gonna collect. Don't compromise your needs is next. You can't pour into someone when your cup is empty, or even if there's content, it's cracked, so it's leaking still. Next is focus on healing yourself first. That's the only fixer-upper project that really matters, selfish as it sounds, because you cannot help someone when you can't help yourself, And a more specific one is date wholeness, not potential. You're going to fall for someone. I can't tell you who to fall for, because your feelings are your feelings and your heart is your heart. But fall for someone who's already choosing growth, not someone you have to drag into it. Because, again, you can take a wish the water, but you can't make it drink. And as especially women who date men, we need to realize that a man will change when he wants to. You cannot change a man. You can't. A baby won't change him. Marriage won't change him. Baby. Especially like having kids when you think you can fix him or change him. How he treats you is like a very good indicator how that baby gonna be treated. Or is actually gonna be a point of soreness for you when that baby treated so good and he still treats you nonsensically. Alright, therefore, we're not saying date perfect people, but if you want to date someone who is like in a position of hurt, meet them, or rather grow with them in their stage of they are choosing to grow. A man stuck in his ways, you may actually end up, unaliving yourself emotionally, trying to give him life. And it can actually apply to friendships, not just relationships. Because some friendships are like that. We can fix our friend. You can't do it. You can support your friend. You can be there for your friend, but be there for yourself as well. The key point of this is you also matter in all this. And I just want to have a bit of some fun with this. Let's play a game. Is it delulu or dangerous? I'll actually put it up as a poll because I want to hear your thoughts. Is I can fix him energy a red flag or spiritual practice? Not in like the spirits way, please don't. Is he a work in progress or your next heartbreak? I'll put up this poll on Instagram at This Is Why Journal. Or if you just want to DM your thoughts on that, check a DM, baby. I'd love to hear from you. And if, not gonna lie, I actually want to see the chaos. If the I can fix him trope turned you into a villain, I actually want to hear your villain origin story. I'm here for that. Let's talk about what makes someone fixable and what you need to just block and just check in your journal. So the fix era is over. Yeah. And here's the takeaway. I can fix him or them. It's not a romantic archetype, baby. It's an emotional trap. You deserve to be the love of someone's life, not their emotional life raft. So, henceforth, herewith. I'm sorry. Look, no more fixer-upper project, babe. No more unpaid therapy work. No more mistaking instability for depth. Let's call a spade and a cat. Cat means like a cat. I got that from Adiola Patron. She said it in a video once. I think she did it that way. So we're like, bear with me. But yeah, we're done. Let's stop romanticizing brokenness in other people, especially if we don't clock it in ourselves. We're choosing healing, wholeness, and peace that doesn't require performance. Soft girls, yeah. And soft doesn't mean like in the Betty Boop type way. Please. Tend to get stuck in the fixing trope. Don't just fix. Receive. And that whole I can fix him thing, it shows the hypocrisy. Because while you're there telling yourself that crying is a weakness and silence is power and numbness is, I hear that in the third, you're there jumping, bending over backwards to fix someone else. If we put, I feel like Hans especially who are caught in that whole I can fix him trope, if we whatever put that much energy into our own healing, it'll be very fun in life, and I think this episode was a bit interesting. I hope it made sense, especially because I feel like the way I flipped from not crying to viewing to we can't cry but we can fix everybody else. I hope that made sense, and it's sad because it didn't make sense, but I feel like the way I might have scripted it didn't reflect that. If you're feeling a little bit tender, after this, you're in the right place. I cried at Angel in Morningside, babes. I processed a lot of tone policing in work, in like bathrooms. I dragged these whole Delulu I can fix him tendencies into broad daylight from time to time. Thank God I stood up. And in this episode, I feel like we made, even if it's just like a little centimeter of space for something we were never really taught to honor, and that's emotional truth. Crying doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Suppressing your emotions doesn't make you strong. It makes you a ticking time bomb. And, we've been taught to shrink ourselves, to apologize when we're emotional, to, oh, I'm sorry for crying. To apologize for being emotional, to hide our feelings, because that's what strong people do, The real flex, though, is to let out, to feel your emotions fully, and to be able to say, I'm not okay, and that's okay. Strength does not directly correlate to silence, nor does it correlate to suppression of emotions. Strength lies in honesty. Strength is allowing yourself to be soft and self-protective as well. It's having the courage to unravel and trust that you'll still be held, even if it's just by yourself. The next episode is going to be the girlhood glitch. We're going to dive into something that sat on my chest for a while, like a bittersweet memory for years actually. And the girlhood glitch, some might know what I mean here, but it refers to, for me, that weird grief that creeps in when you realize you're not a girl anymore, but you're now in the territory of a woman. But being that woman still feels like a costume you haven't tailored yet. It's that existential in between where the girl you used to be feels like a memory, and the woman you're becoming, she's blurry, still under construction. We'll talk about growing pains, outgrowing identities, reclaiming softness in adulting, and like grieving the girl you never got to be, because we all have those hours we never got to be. Because if we're being honest, girlhood wasn't all sparkles and sleepovers. Sometimes it was survival, and we carry that. Therefore, I will see you in the next episode. Bring your thoughts, bring your memories, bring your nostalgia, bring the versions of you haven't spoken to in a while, and let's have a chat. I'd love to stay tender with you. Let's stay tender together. So before I close out, let me know what your thoughts are. You can chuck me a DM at This Is Why I Journal if you want to send me your own tale or something longer and you just want to send a DM. Chuck me an email at thisiswhyjournal@gmail.com. And if you felt something deep, or you allowed yourself to think something you didn't want to think about in a while, if you have, even if you didn't do it in relation to this podcast, I'm proud of you. I know that sounds like a cringe thing to say, but a lot of us need to hear that, because allowing yourself that space to cry or feel, that wasn't a breakdown for you, that was a breakthrough. So final kind of little soft wrap up, because I'm that person who takes forever to say bye. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to feel things without explaining them. You're allowed to break down and still be worthy of softness, romance, success, joy, and love. You're allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress all at once. So if today reminded you that healing isn't linear, that your emotions are not too much, and that your softness is sacred, that's good, because that means I'm doing my job. I'm reaching my goals. So, yes, sweetie, you're not broken, you're blooming, and even when the tears won't stop, you're still the hottest girl. Let me say bye now, because I'm going to keep saying bye. And bye!